Hello and welcome back to the Project Seed Money podcast. My name is Sharissa Bradley, and I am so excited to be joined with Alexa from Aaxel Author Group today. And I cannot wait to just get into this and talk a little bit more about what the process is like, how you help authors, and how you can support my Project Seed Money community. So welcome, Alexa, and thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me, Sharissa. I'm really happy to be here.
Thank you. Let's just dive right in. What would it look like as an author coming to you with my book? What is the process like, and what would the onboarding look like? And then maybe walk me through all the way to how long can you help me?
Okay, sure. So maybe I'll just give a very, very brief overview. The Aaxel Author Group, we are a publishing partner. We work with indie authors who want to pub themselves, but they're not interested in doing it alone. They want the support of a team, and that's where we come in. So with the onboarding process, when we work with an author, assuming typically our relationship is an A to Z relationship, people come to us with a manuscript, they need to have it polished, and then they want to see it out in the world. And so really the onboarding process, there's a bit of a get to know period where, and this really is taken care of, I would say, during our discovery calls where we build a relationship. I think it's so important for authors that, when you embark on this kind of a collaboration with a partner like us, you have to jive. There's a bit of a chemistry element there. And I think it's just as important for the author to get to know their partner as it is for us to get to know the author, because we just want to make sure we're aligned. Because if we're aligned, it's going to be a lot of fun. If we're not aligned, it might not be as much fun. So I always encourage authors, especially if they seem a little unsure, listen to that, tune into that, honor that, and keep looking, because you're really going to be happy you kept looking. It's just going to make the whole experience so much more rewarding and just fun, like I was saying before. So there's a little bit of a get to know. And then when we actually do the onboarding, our very first step is to gather as much info from the author as possible. So this is everything from the story behind the story, very basic things like their mailing address, what types of marketing assets they might already have underway. Some authors come to us and they already have a website going, or whatever the case might be. So we do have some questionnaires, but they serve a really good purpose because it's much more efficient for the author as well as for us. So we just want to find out as much as we can about the author. And then what we do is we give them an overview of what it's going to be like to work with us. And we usually accomplish that during a kickoff call where we introduce the other members of the team and we give an overview to the author of this is sort of the timeline, and this is the order in which we are going to make things happen. And of course, speaking of timelines, we also provide them a timeline. It's one of the first things we do because a lot of authors just want to know, give me an idea of what this looks like. And I know you were talking about time before, like, are we talking 2 months? Are we talking 6 months? So I find timelines are really, really useful for that. And it just gives the author an idea of where they're going, because it's so important to us that the author is not passive in this partnership. They are very much an integral part. And so I just think it's so important. They are kept abreast, that they understand where we're going. And we check things off the list and we always inform the author. We send updated timelines. But yes, we have a kickoff call. We gather as much information as possible. And we start by giving them an overview of the trajectory of the project, depending on the scope of the mandate.
Okay.
And so that's really, in a nutshell, what the onboarding process is.
When should people be getting in touch with you? So at what point are they in their manuscript when they're reaching out to you?
It really varies. I've had authors come to me and they're still at draft one, in which case that can be very optimal. I think it depends on your needs. Some authors already have that network in place for that beta reader feedback, which is so important. And that's not the same as soliciting the insight of a partner or a spouse. It's a very, very different type of feedback. So some authors have that. They've got a good critique group or whatever the case might be. Other authors don't. So some authors come to me while they're still at that very first draft. That's rare, but I would definitely say we've worked with authors who have just finished the first draft. And in that case, our partnership really starts with that manuscript. It's draft one, probably not going to be the version we'll publish. Let's work on it together. Let's chip away until we make it as perfect as possible. And I have other authors who come to us. I've had this proofread, I've had my own editor, and I'm ready to move on. So we always vet the manuscripts in the sense that we want to make sure they are publish ready. And more often than not, they do need some manuscript assistance, and it might as well get that taken care of. There are so many books being published, as I'm sure you know, Sharissa. So it's like, no, you don't even bother getting out there with a half. No, just don't even bother. You really want to make sure your manuscript is up to snuff. So there's that. Other authors will come to us and we're working with an author right now. Manuscript is actually still in process, but they want to start laying the marketing foundation. So that's something, there are really two streams that I guess an author has to consider. There's the actual manuscript preparation and publication, but then there's what am I going to put in place, marketing mechanisms and initiatives to find readers? And every guru will say, you have to start early. And it's true. I mean, ideally, it would be really nice to have a website lined up pre-publication or at the very least alongside publication. And we usually do that. But by the same token, I also reassure authors, it's never too late. This is what's great about being an indie author. You have control. And if for whatever reason you weren't thinking website because you were so deep in your manuscript, that's totally normal. And it's okay. We can still fix that. But usually it's really once they've completed their first draft. And then it all depends because there are so many pieces that go into publishing a book. Even if you're still revising, there are still things we can do as long as you have a clear idea of your storyline, of your premise. You can start cover design. Like we've worked on cover designs. Even if the manuscript is still a work in progress, cover design, we can figure out appropriate categories for the book. We can draft a really good synopsis and an author bio, make sure you have a good headshot. I mean, there are so many things we can do so that when the manuscript is ready, well, we're that much closer to the finish line. But it all depends on the author. Some authors say, no, I can only focus on one thing at a time. And we respect that as well.
That's amazing. Once the book has gotten to that published phase, do you still support authors? Do they stay on with you for marketing support and things like that?
Yes, absolutely. It really depends on the author. And I think there are a couple of things that come into play here. The first thing is some authors get burnt out. They go through that burnout, that creative burnout. They've invested time, they've sacrificed weekends and evenings and whatever the case might be to get the manuscript done. Then they've worked with us. There's a lot of anticipation that builds up, which is cool anticipation. It's excitement. The book is launched. Then, of course, you spend those first 2-3 months. I call it the honeymoon phase for authors, where everyone they've ever met is, hey, I saw your book. That's so awesome. And you're so excited. And then that runs out eventually. It just does. That initial well of enthusiasm, it runs dry at some point, unless you have an infinite number of friends and acquaintances. It just does. But usually when that fizzes out, quite often authors will fizz out, either because they're just kind of burnt from the whole process. Not that it wasn't rewarding and fun and exciting, but it takes a lot out of you, even if you're working with a partner like us, which is why I really recommend indie authors partner, not necessarily with us. We love working with all indie authors, but just in general to get that support so that you're not doing it alone. But even with a group, even with a team like us, you're invested. I mean, at least that's what I think is very unique about our collaboration. We don't just take ownership of the work and run with it and make executive decisions on anything, really. That creative process, we have that author coming along for the ride the whole time. So it's normal if after that first couple of months, you're just kind of, oh, I'm exhausted, or real life comes calling again. Suddenly you have to do some more hours at the office, or your children need some more attention. And so I say all of that because some authors just, when they're in that exhausted phase, they're not necessarily even thinking, well, let me keep this momentum going. Let me keep the Aaxel Author Group or my publishing partner on. Sometimes it is admittedly a bit of an investment issue. If you're not going to do it alone, you have to pay people to do it for you. So sometimes it's that factor, Or sometimes people are really comfortable going at it alone. We've had authors who are so good at social media, for example. They don't need help with that, but they might take us on for other things. I guess the simpler answer to your question is we can go along for the ride as long as the author needs us. So we've worked with authors like for years, and we've had other authors who've done it and then they've really accomplished their goal. And sometimes that goal really is, I just want to get my book out. This is something I've always wanted to do. I'm aware that if I don't do a lot of marketing, no one's really going to find the book, and I'm okay with that. That's fine. That's perfectly valid. It's a really personalized journey and experience, I guess.
It's incredible that you offer so many different facets. It isn't this one size fits all model. It really just depends on what are your needs and how can you serve. And I think that
Yes.
is really beautiful. What types of questions should someone come to you with? So if they're researching, they're interviewing essentially for this partner, and what types of things should they come to you prepared to ask?
One of the things that I would always ask is, what is the book design process like? And why I think that is so important is that for a lot of publishing partners, including us, there are packages. You're going to go on the website, and a common question is, well, how much is this going to cost me? So you'll look at these comparison charts with package 1, 2, and 3. And sometimes in some cases, you'll see a varying price for things like cover design. I think it's really important that authors understand there are different levels of cover design. There is, you provide us with your, this is not us, by the way, I'm just speaking in general about the industry. There is an option where, okay, you provide us with your image and we'll just throw it all together for you. That still qualifies as cover design. But if you don't understand that is as far as it goes, and you're expecting that more start from scratch, blank canvas, customized design, you can end up being frustrated. And this is one of the things very often when I hear authors complain about scams. And I know, I mean, actually, I wrote on my LinkedIn newsletter, I talked about this where, you know, we're not all scammers, but there's no doubt about it that we've got a bit of a bad rap in the industry. And that's because, yes, there are companies who promise the world and they don't deliver, but I think authors just aren't as informed. So figure out, ask real questions about what is the cover design process like? Do you start from scratch? How many concepts will I get? How many rounds of revision? Like really, how intense and how comprehensive is that book design process? That's the first thing. The second thing is who earns royalties, because I find the word publisher is just being used for everything these days. I don't know if you've noticed that, Sharissa. It's like hybrid publishers are a publisher. People like us are a publisher. And I'm always very transparent. We are not your publisher. And if someone is going to dip into your royalties, they should be contributing something. Either they work more like a traditional house where they will actually take on the financial implication of publishing your book, or it's a partnership, or maybe they're going to offer you some marketing services that they will take on. But if somebody touches royalties, they should earn them. So if all you're doing is paying them hundreds or thousands of dollars, but they're kind of still having access to royalties, that to me is something, it's a red flag. I would really recommend being careful about that. Ask them who owns my ISBNs. Because again, if as an indie author, if you're truly an indie author and you're just working with a party like us, you should still own your ISBNs. Because if you own them, then the work is yours. That book is yours. You have complete control over it. If something is being published under the account or under the ISBNs of your publishing partner, just be aware that the book is not really yours. And if you have a great partnership, this can work out well. Sometimes we have authors who say, I worked with such and such a company. I'm not enjoying it. Can I just move to you guys? And of course, it's not that simple, because if the book was published under the ISBNs of the publishing partner, no, you have to kind of start semi from scratch. So these are some of the things that I think are so important for authors to understand. And in terms of the customization, I was talking about book design. I would say website design is another example. Like, am I really getting a customized website? How many pages? What's the design process like? Just to be aware so that you know what to expect. And if you're opting for a package where these services are going to be simpler, that's totally fine. But you just don't want to be one of these authors who was expecting this, and then you feel shortchanged because, oh, but I thought I was going to get more. And then sometimes these disgruntled people will go on social media or whatever, and they'll complain. And yes, of course, you're very disappointed. But if you had been informed, you would have known what to look for and what to avoid. So those to me would be my key questions. Oh, and asking them if you need to purchase any printed copies. Some businesses have this in their model where they want you to purchase a minimum number of copies. I'm not quite sure, but that to me is something. And again, if you know in advance and you're okay with that, that's fine. My personal opinion is that you shouldn't have to order copies of your book. I don't understand why that would be part of the contract, but yeah.
With so many print-on-demand companies now, that really doesn't make sense that you should have to carry inventory and spend hundreds of dollars on books that might not go anywhere. So that's really
exactly.
And then to touch on the ISBN thing, I just only recently learned this, but the ISBN 13-digit code actually is the publisher's code. Like, it has the publisher's code in it. So if someone else is buying your ISBN number, it is going to show up under their publishing
imprint.
Yes.
Yeah. That's it. And it's so important. And as an indie author, you just buy them. Like if you're an American author, you buy them off Bowker and then they are yours. And it's just, this ownership is so important. Again, unless you're okay going into a hybrid publishing model, but that alone, and I know Sharissa, you have a lot of knowledge on that model, but I find there's a lot of misunderstanding around that model. It just, everything's getting lumped together, and the Aaxel Author Group is a publisher and these guys are a publisher. But yeah, if it's a hybrid situation and a hybrid partnership and it's the publisher who owns the ISBNs, that's not a bad thing. There are plenty of authors, even traditionally published authors. They obviously don't have their own ISBNs, but there's an agreement in place where they have certain privileges and the publisher has certain privileges. It's just, if you really want to be indie, you need your own ISBNs.
I completely agree. And it's not that hard to do. And it's really not that much more of an investment to own it for yourself.
It's like, just get your bundle of 10 off Bowker and get the 10, unless you really only have one book in paperback, or maybe you're going to get two, but otherwise get your bundle of 10 and they're yours. And it's wonderful.
I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. And there's so much confusion in the publishing space. And I love the questions that you came with, because I think that really across the board, even if you're going traditional and you're talking to agents, or you're going to a publishing group, or you're going to an indie publisher, all of these things are so valid. Yes. What would you say that, as far as the answers to these questions, when they're getting their answers to these questions, what would you say some of the red flags are? You kind of touched on it a little bit, but do you have any other ideas of red flags in the industries? They're asking these questions. The answer was, oh, you kind of get to be a part of the publishing process. You kind of get to know, what other red flags are there?
I definitely think the customization part is important. I would also ask, what's the communication going to be like? Because sometimes, am I going to get monthly touch base calls? Am I going to be getting emails? How much am I going to play a role? So even if a publishing partner candidate says, yes, we'll have you be a part of it. Well, what does that mean? Push them to qualify that a little bit more. Are you going to be a part of that initial call with the cover designer so you can talk it out? We do that because we think it's really important that the author have a seat at that table and they can express things directly to the designer that we might not be able to provide. So what exactly does that look like? And I would also ask a question of, where exactly are these people located? The resources that are going to be used, where are they located? But to be very clear, it doesn't mean that you can't work with someone who isn't from your own country, but just be aware that sometimes, particularly communication, can be a challenge. And so you want to make sure that communication will not be a challenge.
Oh, I couldn't agree more. That's probably the most important thing, because it's your book. It's your book. You spend the time.
It really is. It really is. And also, just to make sure, ask if there's going to be one core contact person, because I have had authors who've had experiences where they to so-and-so for one facet of the whole mandate and they talk to someone else. But will you have a core team or a core PM, project manager, or someone that you will always be able to go to so that you don't find yourself chasing after multiple people? I think that's really important. And just in general, just bear in mind that, like all companies, what you see on a website is marketing copy. It's designed to sound awesome. And you just want to make sure that the awesomeness has to actually exist behind the words. So if somebody says to you, this is a common one, distribution to thousands of bookstores and retailers, they'll use retailers worldwide. And you have no idea how many authors just assume this means they're going to be in bookstores worldwide. There's a difference. So it sounds good, but then get those questions answered. It's so important.
And as an author, you can handle your own distribution. If you are publishing through Ingram Sparks, you have all that same access. So there's access for you.
Absolutely. To be completely fair, I mean, we tell that to our authors as well. Yes, your book will be readily available to book retailers worldwide. That's not incorrect. But as an author, if you want to know, does this mean I'll be in bookstores? Ask the question, because the answer will probably be no. We're just making your book available. So it's just to understand that there's marketing copy and then there's reality. And of course, you want to make sure that the two are aligned as much as possible. There's nothing wrong with marketing copy, but just note it's marketing copy.
Yeah, ask those clarifying questions. Get deeper in. What does that mean? How did you get into this profession? How did you get into the publishing world? And what makes you want to support these authors so much?
So I'm a writer myself. I've been writing all my life. Isn't that something we always hear from authors? From the time I was 5, I was writing, but I mean, this is just the way it is. And I actually studied writing at university as well. I did a whole bachelor's in writing, which was so rewarding, so much fun. And then from there, I just knew I wanted to run my own business. So I actually started in the business communications. I just started working with business owners, helping them with their website copy, helping them come up with blog posts and content and whatever else. And I had one client in particular who said, Alexa, I have this ebook. Her expertise was on real estate investing. And I had this ebook, and can you help me get it out there? And I said, sure. So I helped her put it together. And I enjoyed that process. And I don't know why, but from that point on, I just found myself meeting other authors. So I'm not one of these, the universe will provide. I know some people believe that, and maybe that is what it was. So I don't want to deny if that's in fact what it was, but that's kind of how it felt. I just started meeting all these authors, and I just love the creative process. I think obviously I'm a writer myself, so there's a very deep connection I have with other people who have written something and they want to connect with readers. I can connect with that. I get that. I also just love the variety, honestly, Sharissa. Like every once in a while, business experts will say, well, you have to drive down to a niche. You have to figure out what your real authors are like. I love the variety, Sharissa. Like I really do. I mean, we work with memoir authors. Memoirs are so great because everyone has a very unique story to tell. So I love memoirs. We do a lot of children's books, and I think children's books are so much fun. There's obviously a lot of rich creativity that comes into play with children's books, but we've also done journals, and journals can be really nice to put together. Plenty of nonfiction, fiction, coffee table books. I'm actually going to be interviewing them on my own little podcast this week, but I've worked with a mother-daughter team. They do poetry, they paint, and they've assembled all of these things into a few books now, and we've done them, and it's been such a privilege. It's complex, it's quite an intricate process, but the result is so wonderful and beautiful and stunning. So I like the variety. I don't see myself ever saying, no, we don't do that anymore. Now we're only doing this type of book. I hope to never do that, because I just think the variety makes it so much more rewarding.
I couldn't agree more. That's one of the main reasons I love being in the publishing industry, because it's constantly changing. There's always something new. I'm never bored. My main thing is that I mostly get overwhelmed because there's so much new. I never really get bored, and I love that feeling. Along those terms, are there any books that you don't take? Are there any types of authors you don't work with?
So thankfully, I've never been in a position where someone has come to me with a book where, for whatever reason, I'm not comfortable publishing. So I'm actually fortunate, I guess, because, I've thought about that sometimes, like, oh, what would I do if somebody came to me with a particular type of book? Obviously, I would take a stand, and that's fine, but it could make conversations a little awkward, not to mention people might just not be very happy with that reaction. But thankfully, I've never been in that position. But I will say, for me, I have avoided certain authors where I was already able to predict that it would be difficult. And difficult means when expectations are not aligned, people who come thinking they have the most amazing book. And there's nothing wrong with belief, but you have to also be realistic and acknowledge that, first of all, this probably could use some work. My manuscript, I think it's great, but hey, you know what? I'd like Alexa's opinion. Let's see if we can make it even better. And B, I'm not the only one who thinks that their book is amazing. So those types of authors. I had an author recently actually reach out to me, and he was ready to go to Hollywood. He wanted to get in the car. He wanted to go to Hollywood, start pitching it. He was convinced that this book was going to be, it would make an amazing movie. It would make an amazing limited series. I mean, all of these little dreams, and there's nothing wrong with having those, but you have to stay grounded. So I would say those types of authors, or people who, I love these types, they keep saying, oh, you're the expert, Alexa, you tell me. But then they really actually don't want to take feedback. So I think there has to be an openness. So to me, it's really been about the relationships. If the relationship feels like this could be a bit difficult, I have in the past said, I just don't think we're aligned or whatever. But thankfully, even those instances, I haven't had too many of those. Because sometimes even the author senses it. And I was saying earlier, it's just as important for the author to say, you know what, Alexa, I don't think we're going to be aligned here. And I have to find someone who's more aligned, whether they're ready to jump in the car with them and hit Hollywood or whatever the case might be. But it's just as important for the author. So I would say those have been a couple of instances where I've said, yeah, but I tend to be a people pleaser, so I don't like being in those situations. But I tell myself, because I've taken on clients, no matter what, we'll make it work. I'll make it work. It's going to be great. And it just ends up being so painful and just not worth it in the end. So, yeah.
I can really appreciate that. So it really doesn't have anything to do with the type of manuscript. It really has to do with, do our visions align? Do our values align? Does our communication style align?
Exactly. But to be very clear, if somebody came with a particular manuscript, with certain content that I would not be in agreement with, absolutely, I would take a stand. It's just so far, I haven't had that experience. It's been more about, this person might have unrealistic expectations, or they might be looking for someone and it just isn't us. It's going to be someone else. So it's been more that.
I think that's amazing. And I think that really shows who you are and your character, because what's giving the publishing industry a bad rep is something called vanity presses. Vanity presses will charge you. They take your book. They do require you to buy books. And that's actually how they're earning their money. And then you most likely won't really hear from them again, because if the book doesn't sell, you're not earning royalties on it. They're not communicating with you. So that's giving the industry a really bad rep.
Yes.
And the way that we combat that is by having these relationships, by having this.
Yes, absolutely. And I can say that when we've worked with authors who have been perhaps with other publishing partners, when I read the Google reviews we get, or even authors who talk to us at the end of a project, it's very rare that they'll say, oh, your expertise was great. Although I believe in our expertise, but it's always the relationship, Sharissa. It's always, you guys answered my emails quickly. I felt really heard. You honored my opinion at this phase or that phase, and it all comes down to relationships. But you see, even the term vanity press, I've had people accuse the Aaxel Author Group of being, because people just don't know the difference. So they hear vanity press, and I think a lot of people have heard the term, even people who aren't writers. And so it's just suddenly everyone is being thrown into that category. And no, you have to understand there are differences. But if you don't understand those differences, oh, you're charging me to publish my book, you must be a vanity press. Well, no, not exactly. No, but I don't know about you, but I come across that quite a bit. So I do spend some time trying to dispel that myth, or trying to clarify that, because it really is an unfortunate misunderstanding. Because if you get support, the right kind of support from a partner that cares, that's going to be amazing. And you're going to really enjoy the indie author journey so much more.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. I really couldn't. And I appreciate you kind of separating it into these categories, because we are all so different in what we offer. And I think the most important thing as an author is to just ask these questions, do the interview process, get to know them. And right away, if they're not willing to have a discovery call, answer your questions, red flag, get away. Because there's so much. There's so much out there. There's way more. So I
There's
feel
tons.
like you've already kind of touched on this, of course, but you are open and you are accepting manuscripts all the time. How can people get a hold of you? Where can they find you?
Sure. So they can always email me directly. I love hearing from authors, even from authors I don't end up working with. I just enjoy, again, possibly because I'm a writer myself. So you can send me emails. It's Alexa at AxelAuthorGroup.com. You can visit our website, connect with me on LinkedIn. I am on LinkedIn. I'm a little bit of a shyer person on social media, but I do enjoy making connections. So you can always reach out to me there. And you can always just check out our website if you just want to learn more about our services. So it's AxelAuthorGroup.com.
That is amazing. And I would definitely encourage our audience to go check out the LinkedIn because you're constantly posting blogs and information about this process. So even if you're not quite ready with the manuscript, go and read on the blog about what it means to have a beta reader, what it means to have these relationships. There's so much value there. Even if you're not quite ready to hire a partner yet, there is so much to offer, especially on the LinkedIn. I feel like almost every week you've got these new articles coming up about the educational process. So it's not just about sales, it's more about here's the information. So I love that.
Yes.
And then just to end us out, I was wondering if you had any encouragement for our author community. These are female authors who are sitting on the fence and they just need that little bit of a push.
So I think to me, the most important thing is I've always truly believed this, that if a story is important enough to you, it will be important enough to someone else. And I mean, I'm a writer myself. It's so easy to get discouraged. I mean, sometimes you're writing and after a while you can't even see straight and you're wondering, is this even worth it? And that's okay. But I would say that it sounds like a little bit of a leap of faith, but it is true. If something is important enough to you, it's going to be important enough to someone else. But you just have to sustain that. You have to give that manuscript love. You have to give that dream some love. And the momentum is really key. And even on days where you just don't feel like it, just write a little bit. And even if it's just crap, it's going to lead to something that's really, really good. Sometimes you just have to write 2 pages of nonsense. And then all of a sudden, this is what I've been waiting for. So just believe in your work, but also if you feel it's that important, it's your responsibility to make it as good as possible so that it's not just slush, because we've got so much stuff being published, Sharissa. Like, I don't know. I sometimes get discouraged because it's great. It's really wonderful for everyone to have that access, but admittedly, it maybe leads to quite a few books that maybe didn't get that love. So you have to be committed to your work, commit to your message, believe in your message, but at the same time, make sure that you have the manuscript to back it up.
Thank you so much for that advice. And thank you for spending time with us today.
My pleasure.
I really appreciate your time today. Thank you.
Oh, thank you so much, Sharissa. It was really a pleasure.
Thank you so much for joining me on another episode for Project Seed Money. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. And I will see you with another interview next week.